Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the booth. We're here with Pro Tour coverage of PT Kaladesh. Luis, this is your first round of Swiss, right, in the Pro Tour?
It is. It's the first time I've been in the booth this weekend. I've been at the news desk so far.
How's it been?
It's been good. I haven't shuffled up yet. I haven't played any games yet, but we're gonna get to watch some sweet magic.
How's it been to actually be on this side this time, though?
It's been fun so far, and we've got a really good matchup coming up.
We do. We have a lot of good matches coming your way, so let's head down to the feature. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to coverage of Pro Tour Kaladesh. I am Gabby Sports, joined today by Luis Scott Vargas, and our main match is going to be Pierre Dagen. You see him sitting there on the left. He's going to be playing blue-red spells today versus Raphael Levy sitting on the right, and he's on blue-red emerge. The players are ready to go. Let's head down and see some magic. Luis, what can we expect from this match?
It's kind of funny. It's a blue-red mirror match, but the decks could not be more different. Pierre is playing a deck that's trying to take control of the game with Harness Lightning, Fiery Temper, Lightning Axe, Galvanic Bombardment, tons of burn spells. But those burn spells basically just target creatures. Fiery Temper is the only one that can go to the face. With his win condition being Dynavolt Tower, 4 copies of that, and 1 Torrential Gearhulk plus Wandering Fumarals, which might get a hit or two in. The tough part for him, though, is he's playing against Raph Levy, and Raph is playing a blue-red deck that tries to make use of the graveyard by discarding Prized Amalgam and Stitchwing Scob or Advanced Stitchwing and getting the Amalgam back by bringing back the Stitchwings.
So it looks like Pierre's off to that kind of start discarding that Galvanic Bombardment to some amount of value. He will be able to burn a couple creatures for more points of damage.
Yeah, both players actually playing Tormenting Voice, though Raph also has Cathartic Reunion. So both players are really on the plan of using red spells to discard cards and cycle through their deck.
Interestingly enough, Pierre's deck does not actually have that many new cards from Kaladesh, but it seems like the cards that have come in for it have enabled the deck to happen, such as Dynavolt Tower, Torrential Gearhulk, Harness Lightning?
Yeah, the Dynavolt Tower especially is really what makes this deck possible. It's essentially, in Pierre's deck, a 3-mana artifact that just taps to deal 3 damage, which is, I mean, that's a broken card. If you can have that reliably tap to deal 3, then you're going to kill your opponent and kill other creatures fairly quickly.
And here it's coming down for the first time. There's a Dynavolt Tower for Pierre.
He's even got an energy hanging out because of an Aether Hub. And see, Dynavolt Tower is simultaneously a win condition while also being a way to keep creatures off the board. The problem for Pierre, though, is that Raph's deck is very good at presenting recursive threats. Prized Amalgam and Stitchwings just keep coming back.
There you see Dynavolt Tower. Whenever Pierre is able to cast an instant or sorcery spell, he'll get 2 energy, and then if he pays 5 and taps it, he'll be able to deal 3 damage to target creature or player. Oh, it looks like the Fumarol is going to be getting in here.
That actually works out quite well for Raph because he's got this Lightning Axe sitting in hand with no targets in Pierre's deck except for the Fumarol and Torrential Gearhulk, but that doesn't actually work out very well for Lightning Axe. Raph's kind of on the receiving end of a not great draw because Raph, he really wants to discard Amalgam. Amalgam is the most important card in his deck, and he hasn't seen any of those. And the way his lands have lined up, he's got 2 tap blue-red lands and then 2 Sanctum of Ugins, which provide only colorless. So he isn't able to really curve out very nicely.
These seem like 2 very linear decks from what we've seen so far, Luis. Is this something that we can expect going into Constructed?
Yeah, we're going to see a lot like this. Like Pierre's playing a deck with 1 creature in it and a Dynavolt Tower and 30-something spells, whereas Raph is playing a deck based only around a graveyard recursion, and you see he's ditching Stitchwing Scob to Lightning Axe and planning on bringing it back eventually with Madness cards. So both decks just have this game plan. Both decks don't do a ton to stop the opponent. Pierre can interact a little more than Raph can. Raph is a lot more on the offensive. He's the one who has to pressure Pierre.
So it looks like Raph is going to be activating that Advanced Stitchwing, discarding Fiery Temper, casting it on this way out, and another Advanced Stitchwing going to the graveyard. So now he's got a 3/4 in play.
Yeah, would you say that Raph just advanced his board?
All right, looks like that Advanced Stitchwing getting in there for 3. Looks like Pierre is not interested in this. We'll be discarding Is it
He's got two different
two
pictures
different
of
lightning axes, and one of them being discarded to the other? All right. This should take care of the advanced Stitchwing.
I just like that he made it clear which picture he was discarding. So you have to know which lightning axe is on the stack. Is it the one from Time Spiral, or is it the one from Shadows over Innistrad?
Looks like I have the correct one now.
Advanced Stitchwing actually, it's not seen in very many lists because a lot of the decks, like the one that Raphael Levy is playing, tend to play black for Haunted Dead instead. And look at it, it's a 3/4. It's a lot larger. It actually doesn't die to Dynavolt Tower or Fiery Temper or most Harness Lightnings.
It looks like an Elder Deep Fiend is coming out here for Raph Levy. Emerging from that advanced Stitchwing and tapping down his lands.
And then Raph now has to decide whether he wants to sacrifice those Sanctums of Ugin, because part of the reason that Raph's deck works so well is that Sanctum of Ugin lets him chain Elder Deep Fiends or turn Elder Deep Fiends into Wretched Gryphs or vice versa. But the disadvantage is he has to actually sacrifice the land, and Raph is not heavy on lands right now.
Looks like it's going to meet a Void Shatter. Away it goes, that Elder Deep Fiend. Not today.
And even though we can't hear the player's communication, Pierre would let Raph resolve the Sanctum triggers first to see whether Raph was getting something else. Then, once he had that information, decide whether he wanted to Void Shatter or the Elder Deep Fiend or not, which it appears he did.
So Raph finds a Cathartic Reunion off the top. This should help him find a couple of lands, since he does seem like he's been very constrained this entire game so far.
Yeah, Raph's been able to do one thing per turn, essentially, and he's operating against an opponent who has 6 lands and is casting 2+ spells per turn. Raph also really, really wants to find Prized Amalgam. And I keep going back to Prized Amalgam because it's a free 3/3. Every time you bring back one of those Stitchwings, all the Prized Amalgams come with it. And without that, Raph is discarding multiple cards to bring back, Stitchwing, Scobber, Advanced Stitchwing, and that's just not, that profitable.
So the Stitchwing Scob coming back to the battlefield, and out of that Stitchwing Scob comes this emerged Wretched Gryph.
And once again, Sanctum of Ugin's trigger, and because Wretched Gryph is a cast trigger, like all the other Eldrazi, Raph gets to decide to draw the card first and then decide whether he wants to sacrifice Sanctum of Ugin. Meanwhile, Pierre, probably not very happy about the fact that all of Raph's creatures right now have more than 3 toughness, so that Dynavolt Tower doesn't have a lot of good targets.
So Hardness Lightning targeting that Gryph. It's got plenty of energy, so it takes it down fully. So if you're Pierre here, how do you try to get an advantage, considering that Raph, his threats are so recursive, right? How are you supposed to win this game? He's constrained on mana right now. How are you trying to get ahead?
The problem is that Pierre doesn't have a consistent damage source. He's got that Dynavolt Tower. He's only got 4 energy. He doesn't have any creatures attacking. He just drew that Wandering Fumarole that's tapped now. But like you said, Raph is just going to keep bringing back Scobs over and over again. He's going to keep emerging Giant Eldrazi, and Pierre keeps having to spend his spells on Raph's cards, and it's just not working out very well for Pierre. He doesn't have a consistent source of damage. So for Pierre to close out this game, he'll want to draw Torrential Gearhook. He'll want to get hits in with Wandering Fumarole. Because if you can get Raph down to like 12, yeah, Dynavolt Tower can finish the game from there. It's not that easy to get 7 activations in.
All right, so it looks like the Fumarole is going to be hitting the red zone. Raph's still thinking about what he wants to do. Not quite attacking yet.
Yeah, and Raph's got a grip full of Elder Deep Fiends, which, again, he can cast here. He can sack Sanctum of Ugin if he wants. And these Elder Deep Fiends are just going to continue punishing Pierre, because Pierre has to use at least a card plus the Dynavolt Tower to kill an Elder Deep Fiend.
Yeah, this is awesome. He keeps playing these Deep Fiends for like 2 mana. It's great.
Yeah, one of the advantages of playing something like Advanced Stitchwing or Stitchwing Scob is they cost a lot of mana if you actually were to cast them, and Raph gets around that. Like, Raph has never even had enough mana to cast an Advanced Stitchwing, but it's hit the board multiple times.
So Raph opting to top down 3 of those lands on the Dynavolt Tower as well. Looks like this time he is going to be sacking that Sanctum of Ugin, and it's going to get a Wretched Gryph.
And Wretched Gryph is also a way to keep up on cards. It gives you more cards to discard.
And his deck has been operating without any amalgams, as you've mentioned earlier, so he should be bound to hit some of them soon.
Yeah, and this is not one of Raph's best draws. This is one of Raph's medium draws, though.
There's the amalgam.
Here we have it.
Elder Deep Fiend getting in there for 5.
And the funny thing about that Sanctum play that that Raph made was he turned a Sanctum into a card in hand. I think there's a good chance he just discards the Wretched Griff to one of the Stitch Wings, but Sanctum turning into a card in hand instead of a card on the board is actually valuable for Raph's deck.
That's true. He is operating under a lot of like pay 2 to return, pay 3 to return, so the emerged creatures are obviously coming in very cheaply as well.
And here we're seeing a play that we're going to see a lot during this Pro Tour, which is end of your second main phase, do something in order to, and in this case, bringing back Advanced Stitchwing in order to trigger that prized Amalgam, which will then trigger at the beginning of the end step. And discarding Amalgam to bring back Stitchwing is exactly how Raph's deck's built to operate.
Yeah, and Raph continues to go inching closer and closer to being able to close out this game.
Yeah, so Raph is now attacking for what would be lethal. Pierre has to, at the very least, use Dynavolt Tower on the prized Amalgam. He could also use Wandering Funeral to block the Amalgam. But either way, Pierre's under a ton of pressure, and Raph's life total is at 20. Pierre's deck is not a deck that can deal 20 out of nowhere. This is a deck that tries to win by dealing, 3 to 4 damage per turn consistently.
I also got a couple of updates from our back tables. I hear that Eric Froelich playing versus Reed Duke is up a game, and Thomas Hendricks versus Carlos Romao is also up a game.
Thomas Hendricks on the Teamer Colossus deck that we saw Martin Mueller play, I believe, or at least a very similar build. And I look.
It's one of your favorite decks, right?
I don't know why I love that deck so much. Maybe it's just playing 0 mana 10/10s. Yes.
What I actually hear is that he's won with 3 Colossi in play.
I don't
so
know.
yeah, would you call that nonsense?
I don't know why it's stated that I like nonsense, but I guess I can't really speak otherwise. So it looks like these 2 Funerals are active, and now Pierre is deciding how he wants to block. He could also double block the Elder Deep Fiend and make them both 4/1s and just go for the trade.
It looks like that's what he's going to opt for. Looks like Raph says that's okay. Down go those 2 Funerals, and Fiery Temper's going to take out this game. Raphael Levy leads 1-0 over Pierre Dagen. We have a lot more Magic coming your way, but first, these messages.
Want to play in the next Pro Tour? Qualifiers are happening this weekend on Magic Online. For more information, visit mtgo.com. Up your game with Ultra Pro Magic the Gathering accessories. Find the best Magic art on card sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, and more. Visit ultrapro.com to learn more and find a retailer near you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to coverage of Pro Tour Kaladesh. I'm Gabby Sports, joined by Luis Scott Vargas, and all of our players are still shuffling. But in the meantime, Luis, can you give us a feel for what we can expect in Standard this time around?
Besides the fact that there's a lot of these linear decks, you're actually going to see a lot of very fast games. I mean, if you notice, all of our matches are currently in between games, and that was not a particularly slow game.
These are also not just aggro decks. These are decks from all over the format that are just going very, very quickly. Yeah,
because you have decks like we just saw Willie Adel's deck tech before this round, and he's playing the red-green Pummeler deck, which, again, the comparison has been made and will continue to be made with Modern Infect, because Electrostatic Pummeler, doubling its power and toughness over and over again, can deal a ton of damage out of nowhere and has a bunch of pump spells. So he's able to, combo off very quickly, whereas, on some of the other tables, you have like red-white vehicles, for example, or in the case of Ben Rubin, he's playing black-red, Madness, Smuggler's Copter, a lot of quick creatures, and you're going to see fast matches as a result.
And Luis, leading up to this Pro Tour, you obviously are not playing in it, but you did get to do a lot of testing. So what was your testing process like going into this?
So I tested with Team Channel Fireball, and we ended up quickly identifying that there were a lot of these like powerful linear decks like the Electrostatic Pummeler deck, decks like the Etherworks Marvel deck that tries to get 6 energy Etherworks Marvel out, Emrakul or Ulamog. We actually saw Oliver too, who's on Team Channel Fireball. Cast a turn 4 Emrakul, like Emrakul the Promised End coming out on turn 4 thanks to Etherworks Marvel. And that's the sort of thing that we haven't seen in Standard all that much. Like the last couple Standard formats were pretty attrition-based and had, a lot of awesome long games. And now we get a lot of awesome, very action-packed games, even if the games themselves, like turn-wise, aren't that long.
It's actually pretty exciting because it leads to some very interesting games where, the decks are trying to deploy their strategy, but also post post-board, the games become quite interactive.
Yeah, because if you're not playing a deck that can outrace something like Either Works Marvel, and few people can, you need ways to sideboard to stop it. Or we saw, the feature match last round, Shota Yasuka against Martin Mueller, and Shota just post-board had a bunch of ceremonious rejections and negates and void shatters and just stopped Martin from getting his Colossus plan going.
We're going to take a live look in at Eric Froelich versus Reed Duke. So Eric is going to be playing Black-Green Delirium, a big player at the last Pro Tour, and Reed Duke has brought red-white vehicles to this PT.
And both these decks are quite aggressive. The Black-Green Delirium deck is a lot more aggressive than we've seen past versions be. Like, you see right now, Eric has a Smuggler's Copter in play. He's got 4 copies of Blossoming Defense. I mean, the +2/+2 and Hexproof is not a card that the mid-range Delirium deck would have played at Pro Tour Eldritch Moon, but because this deck has a lower curve and a lot more attackers, Eric is happy to use this combat trick, which actually seems like a limited all-star, in order to protect his creatures.
Is it surprising at all to see Reed on something like red-white vehicles? This was a known deck going into the format, and Pantheon usually comes up with pretty interesting decks for the Pro Tour.
Yeah, if you told me Reed Duke was in the feature match and one of the players was playing black-green and the other player was playing red-white aggro, I would not have put Reed on the red-white aggro side. Definitely not. But a lot of the members of the Pantheon chose to play the red-white deck because it's a fast deck. It punishes decks for not being quick enough to deploy their plan, and it's a very consistent deck.
So serving to the Conduit, getting into that chopper very quickly. In comes for 3, and the draw is a Grimflayer for Eric. He's still deciding what he wants to discard. It's the same Grimflayer.
Yeah, it doesn't look like Eric had a third land there. So Eric, despite having a very powerful hand, he has Ishkanan, Verger's Gearhulk. He's not able to get very close to playing them.
All right, and it looks like Fleetwheel Cruiser is ready to vroom. In come all the creatures into the red zone.
Wow, yeah, that's a hit for 9. And one thing about Smuggler's Copter, it's not great on defense. It's a fantastic card. It's one of the best cards in Standard. But when it comes to blocking, it just puts you down a creature. And when Eric's on the back foot here, and it doesn't look like it's going to be very easy for him to defend.
You drew an Appetite for the Unnatural, but he's looking for lands at this point.
Appetite is pretty good, though. It does let him devour a Fleetwheel Cruiser, as unappetizing as that sounds. And that will put Eric up to 6. He also might be in the kind of spot where if Reed doesn't have an artifact, that Toolcraft Exemplar will just become, an exemplar. no tools allowed. Reed also has that Needle Spires, though, threatening to activate. If Reed has spells, Eric's in trouble. But if Reed has lands, then that Needle Spire is actually a relevant attacker.
Well, he does have a couple of lands in hand. So down comes that Plains. Another Fleetwheel Cruiser. It enters the battlefield, and the first turn it comes down, it's actually a creature, so won't be needing any crewing right now. The beginning of combat, it looks like this Exemplar is triggering, piloting
the other Fleetwheel Cruiser. Now that Exemplar is big enough to actually reach the steering wheel, it was too short before.
It was too short before.
Needed
a little boost.
A 3/2, yeah.
So both Fleetwheel Cruisers and the Thraven Inspector are getting in there.
So if Eric wants to cast Appetite for the Unnatural, which he presumably has to survive, he's not able to crew the Smuggler's Copter. He's going to have to tap Servant of the Conduit for mana. So if he could block Thraven Inspector, Appetite to go up to 6, fall down to 1, and try to stabilize from there. Blocking Fleetwheel Cruiser is kind of an exercise in futility just because it has Trample and Servant's only going to absorb 2 damage there. So Eric's in a tough spot, but it doesn't look like he's quite dead yet. Of course, Reed has Archangel Avacyn in hand, and she's going to be pretty tough for Eric to beat if the game goes much longer.
All right, so it looks like Eric is moving into blocks potentially.
If Eric has Grasp of Darkness, that does change things, because now Smuggler's Copter can block one of the Fleetwheel Cruisers. He can grasp the other one, and then take 3 damage, falling to 1 instead.
I think that's what's happening over here. So Smuggler's Copter getting in front of the first Fleetwheel Cruiser. Let's see what Eric discards.
The backup Smuggler's Copter may not be what he needs right now.
And that's exactly what he decides. Yeah, and then Grasp of Darkness takes care of the second Fleetwheel Cruiser. So Reed only getting in here for 1.
Yeah, that does, and that does leave both fleet wheel cruisers in the graveyard. It means that Eric has fewer threats to deal with now, but unfortunately, at 1 life, Thraben Inspector and Toolcraft Exemplar, even the tiny Toolcraft Exemplar will still finish Eric off if he's unable to mount a defense. Eric, yeah, he really need to hit a land there because Catacomb Sifter provides 2 blockers, but if you have to tap Servant of the Conduit, then Needle Spires can just be activated, and then Reed can just attack for lethal.
So their plans as a land for Reed this turn. It looks like the Needle Spires is getting in there, and that is enough. Reed Duke takes down this game.
And we see
Yeah, they're going to push it into a game 3.
And we've held Raphael Levy and Pierre Dagen there, so we're going to be able to catch all the action from their match. And taking a look at sideboard,
This is a card we haven't seen very often in Constructed, actually. Take inventory for Pierre.
Oh, yeah. I haven't seen that since Eldritch Moondraft stuff. But take inventory is a pretty sweet one. Oh, wow. Raph's on double Sanctum of Ugin looks like his only lands. This game could not go very well.
Oh,
for
no,
Raphael
and he missed
Levy.
his third land drop as well. Anticipate for Pierre. So what do you think happens post-board here?
I like Pierre's chances a little more because Pierre is able to board in Thing in the Ice and Niblis of Frost, or some combination of those potentially. And what those give him is a lot more pressure. He's able to take out some removal because removal is just not that effective. We saw game 1, Raph just get his creatures killed over and over, and they're just designed to come back. That's all they do. But Niblis and Thing in the Ice give Pierre a much faster clock. I mean, Pierre drafted a really good deck here. Take inventory and Niblis of Ice. But yeah, Niblis actually looks excellent here, especially since Raph is under pressure to remove removal spells because Pierre didn't play any targets game 1 except for Wandering Fumarole. So if Raph took out some of his removal and then Pierre brings in Niblis of Frost, that could be pretty good. Though, actually looking at Raph's hand, he still has Lightning Axe and Fiery Temper in his deck. So it looks like he either anticipates the creature sideboard plan or it just doesn't have enough cards to board in, so he wants to keep some of his removal in.
And these take inventories are starting to become quite good. That was 2 more cards for Pierre. Oh no. So it looks like Raph has found an island, but he still has so many red spells stranded in his hand.
The one good thing for Raph, though, is he was able to get Advanced Stitching into the graveyard the hard way, just by discarding the hand size. And now Raph can go end of second main phase, discard 2 prized amalgams to return Advanced Stitchwing, bring back both prized amalgams. Raph went from 0 things on the board to 9 power.
There you go. And step here, they come back.
Still, if Raph doesn't draw untapped red source pretty soon here, then Pierre may be able to use Nibbles of Frost to
Torrential Gear Hulk.
Yeah, when it rains, it pours, and Torrential Gear Hulk is going to be able to ambush one of the amalgams and cast Anticipate and also trigger the Niblis of Frost. So Pierre kind of gets to do it all, and he could even attack for 12 on the way back if he doesn't have a spell with Wandering Fumarole, and the full 13 if he does have a spell.
An update from one of our back tables as well. It looks like Ben Rubin has defeated Willie Adel 2-0.
And it looks like Pierre just closed it out. Raph actually didn't play a spell that game. Technically, all he did was activate Advanced Stitchwing. He ended up with a bunch of creatures in play, but he never put a spell in the stack.
Hey, the best discard sometimes is discard to hand size, so obviously this one didn't work out so well. We're going to take a look at one of our back tables. This is Thomas Hendricks versus Carlos Romao. We're seeing it. Temur Colossus is your favorite deck versus Jeskai Control. Both players are currently sitting at 3-1.
All right. Well, this looks like a pretty sweet game. We've got Elder Deep Fiend and Thought Knots here with what looks like a Colossus just getting fetched off Sanctum of Ugin, facing down a Gideon with 7 loyalty, a Torrential Gear Hulk, and 3 Night Tokens. All right, so what's going on here? The Colossus count currently is they cost 7 mana. Just Prophetic Prism and Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot are making the Colossi cheaper. So Hendrix is in the unenviable position of needing to pay a lot of mana to do it. One of the things to note is that this deck has handwear battlements.
Yeah, and it's actually right out there.
And that can give Colossus haste, leading to some pretty sweet turns, with Hendrix being up game, actually.
Looks like Thomas found a Sky Sovereign off of that Prophetic Prism.
And if Sky Sovereign resolves, all of a sudden, because of Prophetic Prism and Sky Sovereign, Colossi become free. And then he's got a Sanctum of Ugin, so he can double Colossus this turn, assuming Carlos doesn't have a counterspell. On the other hand, Thomas is under a decent amount of pressure, though if Sky Sovereign resolves, it could take out a Knight or deal 3 to Gideon.
Looks like Ceremonious Rejection. It's going to say no to that Sky Sovereign.
And that's one of the most important sideboard cards in the format. I would say most blue decks have access to 3 or 4 of them post-board, with some of the blue decks actually main decking the card. Just because there are so many colorless threats between Aetherworks Marvel, Metalwork Colossus, Sky Sovereign, Eldrazi. It does a lot of different things. Also seen a lot more Anticipates being cast than, well, I anticipated.
Yeah, it's been quite popular so far this weekend. Oh, how about Blessed Alliance? Is this a sideboard card coming in against a deck like Thomas's?
Looks like Carlos actually is running one in the main deck and one in the sideboard. So, yes, it is a sideboard card, but it is also apparently a main deck card. It's a way to target, well, it doesn't actually target, but target the creatures, it targets the player, but it's a way to fight against decks that attack with just one creature, and it gets around something like Hexproof, so the Electrostatic Pummeler deck can't save their creatures if they're attacking with just one of them.
It actually looks quite good given how many Aetherworks Marvels and other very go-big creature decks we've been seeing.
Yeah, and Carlos happy to side it in against a deck playing 10/10s and Elder Deep Fiends and whatnot.
It looks like that Gideon is going to emblem.
And Gideon must have gotten aggressive this game. You don't see Gideon at 7 loyalty.
No, not often. Torrential Gearhulk coming in.
Yeah, Torrential Gearhulk now a 6/7, so it can actually battle past Elder Deep Fiend. Looks like Thomas, he's just going to be aggressive. He's just going to take the damage. Though he's attending the Inventor's Fair, so every upkeep his life total goes up by 1. Inventor's Fair is a pretty interesting card. It's like a backup Sanctum of Ugin, because you can sacrifice it to go get another Colossus. Like, this deck's just all about stacking up Colossus.
How important do you think Inventor's Fair is to this general strategy?
It's not as important as Sanctum of Ugin, but it does enable the deck in an important way. Having this land be kind of an additional spell is crucial to the deck. Without Inventor's Fair, I think the deck would be significantly weaker.
Well, it looks like the first one might be coming down here.
All right, so this is the turn that's great, because Colossus comes out, Sanctum gets triggered, potentially get a third Colossus off Inventor's Fair, though the fact that Thomas did have to pay 5 for Colossus means that it's not going to be quite the turn I was hoping for of the triple Colossus.
You like to play them for free, right?
Well, it's a lot more fun, because then you just go bam, bam, bam. I would love to see the achievement unlocked of 4 in the same turn, but I haven't actually. Not only have I not done that. I've seen you cast
3 in one turn.
Yeah, 3 is the max.
That's the most I've seen. Looks like Void Shatter. Oh, and unfortunately that also exiles the Colossus, so he won't be recurring in anytime soon.
Yeah, Void Shatter looking surprisingly good, this constructed environment. Like we saw Shoda use it successfully against this Colossus deck, and last round, and then Carlos, of course, casting it just now. So maybe Void Shatter is the key.
It looks like this game might be continuing on for a little bit of time. So let's actually head back to our main match and see the conclusion of Levy versus Dagen.
Yeah, especially since Colossus doesn't have trample, getting through all those Knight tokens is going to be a slog. Like Colossus, it can stride over and smash a Knight token into the ground, but a new one appears every turn thanks to Gideon. Well, Levy has access to both blue and red mana this game, so that's exciting.
Oh, and Levy is unfortunately on a mulligan once more, but like you mentioned, at least he has colored mana this time around.
Yeah, and Raph is playing a deck that mulligans very well. It's unfortunate because he does need actual cards in hand in order to discard to his Stitch Wings, but his deck isn't really an attrition deck. It has a lot of ways to get free cards, essentially, with the Amalgams. So Levy's playing the kind of deck that you would actually expect to mulligan a fair amount of the time, because Levy can get plenty of 3-land 4-spell hands that are just not remotely keepable. And the flip side of that is that his 6-card hands can often just be fine.
An update from one of our back tables as well. Thomas Hendricks and Carlos Romero have evened it out, so they're going into a game 3.
Whoa, that game ended quickly.
Yeah, it did. Also, importantly, Raph has found a prized Amalgam.
Yeah, he's got that advanced Stitch Wing in the graveyard, so at the very least he can bring back Amalgam plus Stitch Wing here.
Looks like he is going to opt for that. Discarding a Mountain and Amalgam. Amalgam comes back at the end step. Looks like Pierre might have something to respond with here.
And again, if Pierre doesn't draw one of his creature-based threats like Niblis, Thing in the Ice, or the Torrential Gearhulk, then eventually it's going to be hard for him to deal with all of Raph's threats. Like, look, Pierre just cast Fiery Temper to kill Prized Amalgam. He spent a spell on a card that Raph put into play for 0 mana and almost essentially 0 cards.
And knowing full well that it could come back so easily, too.
Yeah. Especially since Raph, with his 7 different Emerge Eldrazi, is able to put prized or advanced Stitch Wing back into the graveyard so it can come back, bring back prized Amalgam. It's this loop that keeps going, and there's like Sanctum of Ugin in play, so Raph's going to be able to get another Eldrazi if he deems it necessary.
So the advanced Stitch Wing is going to attack for 3, and Raph now deciding what he wants to do post-combat.
Raph running through all the calculations, and part of it is that one of the keys of this deck really is knowing when to sacrifice Sanctum of Ugin. You sacrifice it too soon, and you end up short on mana, but if you wait, you might not actually be able to trigger it later.
All right, so it looks like advanced Stitch Wing is... There's a Griff coming out of the Stitch Wing. Getting emerged. Gets to draw a card as well. He is going to sacrifice that Sanctum.
And Raph has 1 mana floating, hasn't played a land yet. He can play a land and immediately get back the Stitch Wing, bringing back prized Amalgam, and just kind of end up with another army in a can. Just, pop it open, all of a sudden his forces have multiplied.
And there you go.
Raph really, really hoping to find another prized Amalgam, but, the 1 Amalgam he has still being fairly effective here.
So there's the first one. Back comes the Amalgam. And it is back to Pierre's turn. All right, so there's the first card you mentioned, Luis. There's a Niblis.
And this is really key. If Raph isn't able to kill Niblis of Frost, Pierre can spend the next couple of turns playing spells and using those prowess triggers and using those tap triggers to lock down Pierre can lock down Raph's forces with that Niblis. So despite the fact that Raph's attacking for 9 here, I actually think Pierre could be in good shape. Just casting like Lightning Axe, killing Wretched Griff, tapping down Advanced Stitch Wing is already putting Pierre in a pretty good spot in the race.
So taking a look at Dagen's hand, we see nothing. Couple Glimmer of Geniuses. Another Niblis, a Wandering Feral.
Oh, that's not the hand that Pierre wants right now.
Yep.
Glimmer of Genius helps. It is an instant, so he can cast it, beginning of Raph's combat step. But Lightning Axe and cheap spells are really what he wants. I would imagine that, Galvanic Bombardment, for example, got sided out. But Pierre does still have some cheap removal spells, and he's going to need to string those together. The other thing Pierre can do is he can just leave his Niblis back, and then beginning of Raph's combat step, cast Glimmer, tap down one of Raph's creatures, like the Advanced Stitch Wing, for example, and then have a 4/4 Niblis because of the prowess trigger, which means that Raph can't really, very profitably attack Wretched Griff into Pierre's creatures. And then that Glimmer with Scrying 2, Drawing 2 should find Pierre more castable spells. I mean, that's the idea. But we'll see how this ends up playing out.
Take Inventory as a draw for Pierre.
Yeah, that could actually work out. casting Take Inventory now, tapping down Stitchwing, attacking for 4, and then on Raph's turn, casting Anticipate, tapping down Wretched Griff. Pierre takes 3, but 2 of the creatures on Raph's side of the field are tapped, and then that draws Pierre 2 cards from the Take Inventory, lets him look at 3 more from Anticipate, and he can hopefully string together enough cards. I really like Niblis as a sideboard card here. It's looking very good.
He's being a team player here.
It's giving Pierre's deck a new dimension, a recursive threat that also just deals with Raph's creatures, and it's really powerful siding in creatures, especially in a deck that was creatureless to begin with.
So Pierre's still considering his options for the turn. A Wandering Fumarole is a land. Still deciding what he wants to do with the Nibbles of Frost, though. It looks like he might...
And if he's passing the turn...
It looked like he was about to pass.
Yeah, we saw him like unfurling his hand, just reaching over, and then drawing it back. But if Pierre's passing the turn, presumably he's going to want to cast Glimmer of Genius, because that's his 4-mana instant.
I saw the hand motion. It looks like that was a pass.
All right, so Raph deciding now whether he wants to play Elder Deep Fiend and force Pierre to tap out during his own end step. So Pierre's at 8. Elder Deep Fiend comes out. Pierre, unfortunately for Pierre, he can only tap down 1 creature, and the Niblis will presumably get tapped by this Elder Deep Fiend. And if that's the case, then Pierre's actually going to fall to 2 on this attack. This Elder Deep Fiend is going to be pretty good for Raph.
All right, so Pierre with that Void Shatter. Countering the Elder Deep Fiend, triggering the Niblis. The Niblis is tapped, though.
And Void Shatter actually does make things much, much better for Pierre, but Raph drew a great card here.
What did he pick up?
He looked like a Fiery Temper to me, and if that's the case, being able to Fiery Temper and kill this Niblis, that's going to put Pierre in the spot of really needing to find something else, because Niblis is like Pierre's whole game plan. Every card in his hand is a card draw spell, which, as great as that sounds and also is, without a Niblis of Frost out, it's not actually gonna do the trick. Despite Magic being a game that should be won or lost based on how many cards you draw, there actually is a little bit more to it. Oh, so Raph deciding not to Fiery Temper the Niblis of Frost. It looks like what he may be doing is trying to just sneak in a couple more points of damage and Fiery Temper Pierre directly, which that could also work.
He's close. He's at 5. But yeah, we do know that he does have this Fiery Temper in hand.
But I think Pierre's not going to let any more damage through. Pierre's going to do his best to just keep stringing spells together such that his Niblis of Frost locks down all of Raph's creatures.
And he picked up a Hardness Lightning off the top there, too, from that Take Inventory.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how this plays out, because Raph maybe hoping to just draw 2 Fiery Tempers. That could also work.
And Anticipate. Triggers a Niblis again. This one locks down the Amalgam.
Okay.
Raph says that's fine.
And Pierre does have to worry about that Wandering Fumarole on Raph's side of the board, as well as Advanced Stitchwing, which presumably the Stitchwing also may come out here end of turn, triggering Fiery Temper. Can't kill the Niblis because remember 2 Prowess triggers have resolved, but Stitchwing putting Pierre to 2 and then leaving Raph facing down, or leaving Raph with a 3/4 attacker. That could put some pressure out, but Pierre was able to anticipate into a land, which is really what he wanted to do. An untapped land means that he's able to still cast Harness Lightning here.
Yeah, so it looks like Fiery Temper is going to go at Pierre. Back comes the Stitchwing. Pierre has to be very careful. Here's at a very precarious life total.
Actually, Pierre is just dead to Raph drawing any land if he taps out right now. But so that's why Pierre wants to wait on Harness Lightning. So, because if Raph draws, it's actually really interesting. If Raph draws a land to animate Fumarole, Pierre would need to let Raph attack and then Harness Lightning. But if Raph activated first, then Harness Lightning wouldn't be able to target the Fumarole, and the Niblis wouldn't be able to either.
All right, so the Hardness Lightning is going to take down the Amalgam.
And then the Niblis trigger tapping down Advanced Stitchwing. So actually, no, Pierre was just dead to a land. Huh. Almost. No, it was very close. It's like very tricky with how Raph had to activate, because Harness Lightning can only deal 3, but the Amalgam trigger or the. So if Raph had played an untapped land and gone to attack, Pierre would have had to cast Harness Lightning, then Raph could have animated Funeral after that.
Yeah. And then just bash.
A very odd sequence, but Raph didn't. He drew an Advanced Stitchwing or a Stitchwing Scob instead. So now Pierre is kind of in the driver's seat. He's untapped. He's got Niblis of Frost, but he's under pressure. Pierre needs to cast a lot of spells every turn in order to stop Raph from attacking.
How about Thing in the Ice to reset the board?
Yeah, Thing in the Ice could get there. That is definitely not something Raph can just disregard, but all of Raph's creatures fly right now. So Pierre actually keeping his Niblis back.
It looks like Raph drew a Funeral. All right, so Glimmer's going to be able to trigger the Thing in the Ice, tap down the Wretched Griff, get some energy as well.
Players determining which creatures are untapping next turn and which aren't, because they're very.
It is hard to keep track of. Yeah, they've been tapped at so many different points. So it looks like he did not like either of those cards and shift both to the bottom. Sure, Raph was probably happy to see that.
Raph deciding not to keep the land in his hand for a bluff instead. Just playing it out. I think that's ticked down to 3. Niblis was a 4/4 last turn, which is why Stitchwing Scob didn't come across. Yeah, this Niblis is just doing a lot of work. And now Pierre has another Niblis.
Second Niblis he found.
Void Shatter and Fiery Temper. So Pierre definitely in the driver's seat here. And Pierre deciding, basically, since Pierre is ahead here, I mean, it's a close game in terms of, like, Pierre is at 2, he's dealing with a bunch of creatures, but Pierre has to decide how to make it so Raph can't claw his way back in. And part of that has to be, can I afford to keep up Void Shatter in case Raph draws Fiery Temper? And I think, given the way the board is, it might not be possible for Pierre to do that.
And an update from one of our back matches, Carlos Romao takes down the match between him and Thomas Hendricks. Luis, how differently do you think this would have played out if Raph would have tried to kill the Niblis way back when he had the fight? Yeah, a couple turns ago when he had a Fiery Temper.
I suspect it would have played out better for Raph because he's not getting these last couple points of damage in, and Niblis has just continued to be effective. On the other hand, Pierre did find another Niblis off that Glimmer and has a Thing in the Ice ticking down, but it seems like it would have been close, and having Niblis of Frost in play has really been what is keeping Pierre alive. So Pierre hasn't let any additional damage through, whether he's at 2 or 5. It doesn't change much unless Raph draws another Fiery Temper. And currently, those Niblises are just locking down Raph's side of the board over and over again.
An update from one of our back tables. It looks like Eric Froelich advances to 5-0. He beat Reed Duke 2-1. I love that they're actually speaking French to each other, both Frenchmen.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Though I don't believe they've paired on the same team. They have in the past, but I think this time that they were not. They were not preparing together. I remember doing coverage of Pierre's matches. He actually lost the finals of Pro Tour Theros to Jeremy Dezani.
And we see the handshake. Looks like Pierre is going to take this match. Those Niblis of Frost, they went the extra mile.
Yeah, this matchup looked almost unwinnable game 1 for Pierre, and we even saw Raph's very mediocre draw defeat Pierre, but then Niblis of Frost came in post-board and was quite effective. As Pierre advances here, and Raph still with a good record and a pretty sweet deck, but it is going to be tough given the fact that he had such an advantageous game 1 matchup.
Yeah, but Pierre's going to be feeling good going. Advancing to 5-0 at the Pro Tour is a great start. Blue-red spells, is that something you anticipated at all?
We had some Dynavolt Tower decks. A couple of our people on our team played around with them, but they looked like they weren't quite well positioned enough. But Pierre's sideboard plan goes so far. I actually really think that he has a great sideboard plan here.
Do you think this is good for just the Marvel decks, also this kind of deck, the Colossus kind of decks?
It's going to have trouble with decks like Marvel and decks like Colossus because Dynavolt Tower kills so slowly. But Dynavolt Tower matches up pretty well against Smuggler's Copter. So it'll be interesting to see what Pierre faces over the next couple of rounds.
Do you think the best matchups are just red-white vehicles, that sort of thing?
I imagine a deck full of like Harness Lightning, Fiery Temper, Lightning Axe, Galvanic Bombardment. It would love to play against small creatures. Likes playing against 10-10s and Emrakul's a little bit less.
What about Raph's choice of this almost Dredge-style deck?
Raph is playing a little bit of a different version than most people. Haunted Dead is a very common card in these decks, and instead he's going with Advanced Stitchwing. So we'll see if the advanced technology works out for him.
What do you feel about the exclusion of it?
What Raph gets is a better mana base. He's not playing Grixis. He's playing straight blue-red. What he loses is the fact that Haunted Dead is a slightly, I think, more powerful enabler because it only costs 2 mana and it comes with a spirit.
That's pretty cool. So we'll be seeing a lot more decks like that continuing through this Pro Tour. It looks like we have a lot of good Magic coming our way. It's pretty exciting.
That we do. Another thing I wanted to note, actually, we didn't see it come into play this particular round, but the aggro and aggro matchups, we saw like a glimpse of it with Eric Froelich playing the Black-Green Delirium aggressive deck against Reed's Red-White Vehicles deck.
Is that aggressive? It's playing things like Ishkana.
It's kind of weird, because so Black-Green Delirium is kind of like this spectrum, and on one hand you have Traverse and Emrakul, which is like the high end. On the other hand, Eric has Smuggler's Copter in his deck, and it has 4 copies of Blossoming Defense. So any deck with those cards in it is going to be somewhat aggressive. Gnarlwood Dryad sometimes is a 1-mana 3/3, but seeing the 2 aggressive decks fight is pretty interesting.
Yeah, that'll be really cool. But before we have more Magic, we'll send it to Rich over at the news desk.
Thanks, Gabby. Thanks, Luis. Luis, I'm very disappointed in you. Very. Yes, when it rains, it pours. But this is Kaladesh. When it rains, it Gira pours. Everyone knows this. Anyway, welcome back to the news desk. 5-0, that is our perfect record. Shoti Yasuoka is there. Ben White of America is there. Li Shi-chan from Hong Kong. David Miani, the Italian, in his first PT. Matt Costa, winner of Grand Prix Baltimore a few years ago, and a top 8er at the Pro Tour level. He's 5-0. So is new Hall of Famer Owen Turtenwald, suited and booted today. He's come in looking sharp and playing sharp. 5-0. And also Alan Wu of the United States are among the players at 5-0 as the field continues to whittle down towards our 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 perfect records at the end of the day. But we are going to go out onto the floor where there are still, as you can see on your screen, around about 25 matches still going. So what we're going to do is, we mentioned Chris Botello to you. He came and talked to us yesterday, and he does have a pretty interesting deck. So why don't we get a little word out on the floor, Brian David Marshall with Chris Botello.
So we're going to do an interview. Hey, everybody. I'm here with Chris Botello. Chris, we were talking yesterday, and so you said you had a kind of cool deck built around an artifact. So I imagine you have an Aetherworks Marvel deck.
No, actually, I have a Dynavolt Tower deck, but a little bit special of a Dynavolt Tower deck.
So this is how you win?
Sometimes. Most of the time, it's a little card called Fevered Visions that I've grown to love over the years.
Wait a minute. So it's a Fevered Visions Dynavolt Tower deck?
Fevered Visions, Dynavolt Tower, and Consulate Surveillance.
Wait, what? All right, Chris, why are we not doing a deck tech? Do you want to do a deck tech?
I would love to.
Come on, let's go back. Let's take you back. We're going to go do a deck tech. And we're going to see what you brought to the table here. Chris, of course, is the guy who brought us the Cat Pack deck at Grand Prix Portland. This was the crazy Demonic Pact Harmless Offering deck. And come on back here. Here we go. Let's walk back here. Here's Chrissy. She's going to just take a little bit of the shine off your forehead there. All right. All right. You're all set. Now come on over this way. Come on in here. Come into the studio. You're going to be doing this with Ian Duke here.
Awesome.
So bring you over, introduce you guys. Ian, this is Chris Botello. Chris, Ian Duke from R&D.
Thanks for joining us.
He's got a sweet one here, so
I've
you guys
heard.
are going to talk about it and break a leg.
I'll try not to.
Sounds awesome. So why don't you come right over
we
here?
go.
All right.
I don't know why I even bother to prepare this stuff. Apparently, it's time for a deck tech with Chris Botello. Off you go.